Good morning, everybody. This is Stacy Hobart with New Buildings Institute. I want to just welcome you to this call. We're kicking off a Getting to Zero Leadership Network, and that's the purpose of this call. And we've been communicating with you about some of the things we're trying to do. And I just wanted to share some of the orientation about this, what we're going to be talking about for the next hour or so. I wanted to just let you guys know that you are muted, so we can't hear you. And we're going to kind of assess whether we can take you off mute as the call goes on. This is less of a webinar, more of a meeting, and so we definitely want it to be interactive. But we also recognize when we have 20 people on a call, it gets a little 20 or 40 people on a call, it gets a little challenging with background noise. So we want to make sure that you can hear. So if you have any questions or you run into any technical difficulties, please just put it in the chat and let us know, and we'll help you as we go. And if you have a question or you want to chime in, just go ahead and raise your hand. Use that dashboard on the right-hand side of your screen to raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute you, and we can kind of have a conversation from there. Go ahead and go to the next. So today we're going to be talking about the Getting to Zero Leadership Network, but the purpose is really just to introduce you to this effort and hear from you what we might be able to do to support you and make this sort of raising awareness about getting zero energy and zero carbon buildings more effective. Again, like I said, my name's Stacy Hobart. I'm the Communications Director at NBI, and with me is Webley Bowles. She's a project manager here who's been working on this effort. And we're both going to be talking to you, kind of briefing you on what we're seeing happening, and then a little bit later on, we'll be having a conversation about what you guys are seeing and kind of experience in this market. Things are changing rapidly right now, we feel like, in the zero energy buildings market, and we want to try to make sure we're accounting for everything that's going on. So we're going to give you a little bit of a status update of what the landscape we're viewing. We want to report out on the 22 by 22 challenge that we just that we're wrapping up. Is it quite wrapped? Yesterday wrapped up. Okay. We wanted to review some of the tools that we have already available to you, and then have a little bit more discussion about some of the things you might need. So I guess go ahead. So just to kind of give you an overview of this Getting to Zero Leadership project, this is a project of New Buildings Institute, and we have some funding, philanthropic funding, to try to help drive better awareness in the market about zero energy buildings. And now that's extended to zero carbon, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. But essentially, NBI tracks zero energy buildings across the United States and Canada, and in that count, what we're learning are, different aspects of this market in terms of trends of technology or locations or building types, size, et cetera. And we try to report that back to the marketplace to help, accelerate adoption of this practice. And so in addition to that tracking, some of the other things that we're doing is trying to work with advocates like you to, have there be a bit of a extension of this information, so that you're sharing that with people that you're working with, and they're sharing that with people, and so on. So we're really trying to raise awareness and provide support for the market to pursue these kinds of projects. We also work with local jurisdictions. Some of these are government entities, and some of these are grassroots organizations that are trying to push zero energy and zero carbon policies forward. So we try to support them in ways that help them raise awareness, that get them oriented to, some sort of like strategy that's going to help them be more successful. A lot of times these entities are cash strapped and they need additional resources, and so that's where we come in and try to provide support. We also raise awareness through general publicity. So on this slide, you see a couple mainstream media stories about zero energy buildings, both in Forbes and CNBC. We're starting to see that more and more. What was kind of this, just really esoteric trade topic for trade publications is becoming more mainstream, and as climate action is becoming more and more of an urgent the top of mind thing for people, we're starting to see more of these pickups. And so we want to keep driving that so that people understand that there are options for them to have better energy outcomes and lower carbon emissions by reading these articles and the publications that they look at. We also work to place this topic on trade meetings. So, AIA meetings, ASHRAE meetings, Passive House, et cetera. We have, through the work that we've done with the National Forum, or the Getting to Zero Forum that we've held the last 3 years, or three cycles, we've accumulated quite a bit of material on what's happening nationally in zero energy. And so we work to try to share that information with some of the other trade groups that are having meetings. The other thing I should say that is, if you guys have questions at any time during this, go ahead and put it into the question pane. And Connie, will you just prompt us if you see anything that we would stop and discuss? I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So, hi everyone, my name is Webley Bowles. As Stacy said, I'm a project manager here at New Buildings Institute and working with Stacy on this project. As Stacy mentioned, we are trying to drive more zero energy projects, and one way we do that is by counting them. So starting in 2012, we started counting the number of zero energy projects, and over the years we've seen an increase in these projects, and where we are now, it's tenfold from where we were 7 years ago, which is a great jump, and it shows that the market is progressing. We're tracking both ZNE Zero Energy Emerging and Zero Energy Verified. And you likely know that Zero Energy Verified means that that the energy use has been canceled out by the energy production on site over the course of a year. And then the Zero Energy Emerging are projects that have zero energy goals that have either been built or are in construction and trying to reach that zero energy target. So we'll show you a couple of examples of those later on. As Stacy mentioned, also we're seeing this shift towards zero carbon. It's no longer just zero energy; it's zero energy and carbon, and that's because these goals really align together. We used to focus more on kWh savings, and now we're seeing that buildings can meet carbon goals, and so we're tracking the carbon associated with that as well. So NBI is in the process of creating documents around that, and we're receiving a lot of questions from leaders like yourself around this topic. We're also seeing that many organizations are making commitments around zero energy and zero carbon. Just last week, American Institute of Architects passed a resolution that states, commencing in 2019 and continuing until zero net carbon practice is the accepted standard of its members, the AIA prioritize and support urgent climate action as a health, safety, and welfare issue to exponentially create the decarbonization of buildings, the building sector, and the built environment. And that's a very long sentence, as most resolutions are. But the main point is that a large organization is making this common practice within architecture. And so we're excited to see that movement going forward. We're also seeing collaboration among some of these larger organizations. Earlier this month, or last month, NBI signed an MOU with USGBC, who has about 200,000 members, to help advance zero energy. And similarly, we're now working with ASHRAE to also advance zero energy. And ASHRAE and AIA are working together on research, education, training, and code advancement. So this collaboration will really help push the market, and by aligning those goals, we can see larger results, and we expect to see those numbers of zero energy buildings grow as well.
Yeah, so one of the things that's sort of bearing out in this process is the idea that when you look at the market diffusion curve, typically you have early adopters who are, and that's really the people on this call and the Z leadership group. You have early adopters that are pushing forward with new concepts, and that runs through a curve where you move to sort of a middle segment, and then ultimately you end up with laggards. And we use the policy to bring those laggards along, right? It just becomes illegal for the laggards not to do the activity that the policy is requesting. In this case, in this market, we're seeing a much a little bit of a different kind of dynamic going on. And so what this slide is trying to convey is that, you know, you have sort of the regulatory policy environment, and then you have the market environment. This market probably isn't going to be changed through, you know, a heavy marketing campaign or anything like that, any kind of local grassroots effort. It's going to be a regulatory play where policies get put in place and start calling for these kinds of buildings. But what we're seeing actually is the policy is leading in this case, and sometimes boldly, but there's a synergy that happens between the market and the regulation that I think is interesting, which is, you know, you guys are creating enough political will that gives the policymakers cover to push these policies through. Obviously, there's tremendous pressure from, you know, a lot of these policies are centered on climate action planning or, you know, sort of energy plans, but they need people locally who are advocates to help push these policies through. And I think, you know, the market is really looking for these policies to give them visibility into what's going to be expected of them in the future. So we're seeing a much more dynamic sort of play between these two sides of this equation, you know, the regulatory side and the market side. And it's, you know, the potential, and Webley mentioned this coalescing of the industry groups around these concepts. The potential for rapid change, we think, is very high, because things are sort of aligning in ways that are really positive around rapid change toward, you know, much better efficiencies in buildings, integration of renewables, you know, cleaner resources providing energy to buildings. And so those are sort of the things that we're looking for. And we feel like, you know, the goal of this effort is to really activate this leadership group to be ready to explain what's happening in the market. And so our goal is to really align everything before that time comes so that we're ready to help everybody kind of speak consistently and deliver the messages in ways that make sense. So this slide is really kind of a sampling of some of the local efforts that we're seeing going on. So you see kind of a, probably from the left side is more governmental entities. To the right side of the slide is more grassroots entities. But we've got, you know, District of Columbia, groups in Colorado, Connecticut, Rhode Island, or the city of Providence, Illinois, you know, states that maybe you don't always, you know, places like Illinois, you don't always see on this list of states taking action on this kind of topic, but we're seeing more and more of that it's spreading. And this is really just a sampling because there's a bunch of stuff going on in Oregon, et cetera. On the right side, you see, you know, this Zero Oregon, which is a grassroots group. There's another one in Washington. North Carolina has a group now. Of course, California has, you know, a number of groups that are working in this space. And so part of this effort too is, in addition to helping advocates like you, we're also trying to help some of these other local government groups and grassroots groups with support and resources that are going to help them go further faster. So part of this too is connecting this advocacy, the CE Leaders advocacy group with some of these local entities so that we can make sure that, you know, everybody is coordinated and at least, and hopefully collaborating. I think that's the ultimate goal.
So we started this experiment of this leadership group to see how we can engage with known leaders and ask you to step up. Since you're all active in the space, we know that we can call on you for support when we need it to help push forward public policies. Part of this is also to see how we can bring leaders together to make sure that you have the resources that you need to be successful in your work, and then also convince your colleagues and maybe some of the laggards or skeptics to move forward. So in this fun 22 by 22 challenge, we heard from a lot of different people. You're speaking all over, I want to say the country, but really the world. We've heard from people in Italy and in Mexico City as well, which is, it's really exciting to see. This is from Dwayne Johnlin in Seattle. He put together a public service announcement, which is a little bit intimidating, 22.6 EUI or die, which is, you know, you can't always control the message, but it was eye-catching. And he also spoke at the Codes conference recently and used the same number. So we really want to push out there that this EUI target is an important element in any project to move forward. Thinking about what the energy use intensity per square foot of a project is will help us make different design decisions. We also heard from different people on social media, pushing things out on Twitter, which was pretty fun. So I'm curious to hear from you, if you're so inclined to share. We'd like to know how you reached out. Did you do a lunch and learn in your office? Did you speak to 100 people? Did you try a scare tactic to say that we're all going to die if we don't meet this EUI target? What was the response that you had? So on your screen, you should see a little button to raise your hand if you feel inclined to share. We'd love to hear more about it and how it was received in whoever you spoke with.
Yeah, and Connie, as you see people raise their hand, maybe you could unmute them and we can kind of hear from them. And if you know, we might be able to get responses from other people as well.
If you're all just here to listen, that's fine too.
Anyone yet, Connie?
Yeah, yes, I am unmuting here. Let's see. So I'm running into a bit of an issue. We have, is it Cesar Trevino? I'm trying to unmute you, and you are self-muted. Let's see.
Well, maybe what we could do, Webley, is just go ahead and go on and talk about some of the resources. And then Connie, when, you know, we'll come back to this, just kind of give people a chance to get organized and maybe to work out that technical problem.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh,
are
you there?
Oh.
Yes, Webley. Hello, everyone.
Hey there.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, we lost him.
And here?
Yeah. Yeah, Cesar?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just wanted to share our story. We are based out of Mexico, and we took the challenge very seriously internally in our company. We are a consulting firm, a green building consulting firm. So it's about 40 people. So we had a couple of lunch and learns. Everyone got very excited. We are working on what we expect to be the first certified LEED Zero building in Latin America, mid-scale. It's about 55,000 square feet. It's way gone on into design. We're starting construction. It's a big consortium of companies. So we're putting our energy into this flagship project. And I also had a chance to talk to 800 developers in Mexico City last week. And one of my key slides was about zero energy buildings. So I was very happy with that. So I wanted to share it with you.
Did you say 800 developers?
Yes, it was a Latin American developer meeting in Mexico City last week.
Fantastic. That's great. How was it received?
Well, very well. After my my speech, I had the chance to talk to quite a few people that they didn't know about the concept of net zero, so they were pretty excited, and even more with zero carbon. So it was very fun and a lot of discussion. So I think it was a big impact driving the message to these key stakeholders.
That's great. That is a great network to reach out to and to help them understand the importance of this, not just for the environment, but financially, can really make big strides. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for sharing. And I would say too, you know, if people didn't get a chance to do the challenge during the 22 days, you know, I think other ideas or future opportunities that you'd like to share, I think we'd like to hear just a little bit of a sampling of the ways people, you know, sort of some of the channels that people thought would be likely for them to share the information.
We have another hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Farah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? Hello, everyone. My name is Farah. I am calling you from San Bernardino Community College District. We are in Southern California, and we are one of the lucky school districts in Southern California that has been a part of Zero Net Energy pilot program with Southern California Edison. What that means is that Edison actually paid us to go Zero Net, which is wonderful. And not only that, not only did they help in actuality, we had funding ourselves, but they helped supplement it. So they pay for what's called an incremental cost. So if our project was going to install high efficiency HVAC unit, they paid us to put in ultra high efficiency HVAC units. And Edison also helped us with a lot of energy analysis and technical advice throughout. I've been sharing the new goal of a 22.6 kBtu with my project team members, which are about 30, 40 people. And this has become our new goal. We've been initially, based on our energy analysis, we were aiming for 23 kBTUI, but with this new challenge, we're working on towards achieving that. So hopefully that would be part of the case study.
Sure, that's really great. I want to make sure that you know that we have a lot of resources around schools, and I can follow up with you afterwards as well. And if you're looking for a specific school's target, we can help you with the average. Actually, I can show you how to do it in just a couple seconds. How to get the average school EUI as well.
Okay, that sounds good, because this pilot program is come to an end, and we're going through our measurement and verification period right now. But we are starting our planning for our college campuses. So we plan on achieving ZNE for individual buildings that are, we have about, say, 30, 40 different projects that are going to be coming off the ground in the next year or so. And each individual building, we're hoping to achieve a Zero Net Energy for them. So that we're doing the analysis and studies pretty soon. In fact, our program management team is started mobilizing yesterday. So it's an exciting time for us here.
Fantastic.
That's great. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Connie?
Yes, we have John. John, you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for organizing this and reporting out. This is John Delzell with the City of Boston Planning and Development Agency. And we've had some fun this week, actually the last couple of weeks, pushing forward with our carbon-free building assessment. This is a follow-on to our mayor's commitment for Boston to be carbon neutral by 2050, but the employment of a specific building assessment and starting to lay out the format of that has been the opportunity to really talk about the 22 challenge, and the response has been pretty great. Most of the professionals involved are genuinely very excited to dig into it, and of course this is in a regulatory context, so they have to, but you know, I think in many cases, and certainly the great stories are where the client is right there with them, and so we've even seen some wonderful commitments. There's a building we're reviewing right now, over 300,000 square foot academic building that they just committed to going carbon neutral. So the results are already starting to show up, and it's a pretty exciting moment. There's definitely a groundswell happening now.
Do you feel that, John, like a groundswell, just something of a shift in the last period of time? I don't know if it's 3 months or 6 months, or how long do you think?
We've been out there with our carbon neutral 2050 goal for a while, and we're on the other side of a road mapping exercise, but something different has been happening, I would say, in the last 3 months. And some of it's been the climate change news, some of it's been, in response to stuff out of DC, for instance, but there seems to be a kind of doubling down that's a little different. So there's something different going on, I can say. And maybe we're just getting clearer and more organized about our expectations and how to get there. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are seeing it as an opportunity to rise to, a challenge to rise to.
Yeah, 3 months is kind of where I saw something too. This is weird, like 3 to 6 months, I would say. Yes, definitely a shift. So thank you for sharing. That's great.
Okay, I think we're, Connie, was there anyone else?
No, that's all the hands for now.
Okay, great. We are going to have a little bit of a discussion later on, so if somebody wants to share, feel free to, but I'm going to make sure that we show you some of these tools that we have. We have a Zero Energy Hub right now on our Getting to Zero website that I wanted to show you guys. So we have 5 different categories here, and in each of these there's many, many resources. So overall we have about 200 resources, and within there they are not all MBI resources. They are a conglomerate of many different organizations that are working to advance zero energy. We just wanted to have one place to store them all. So if you come across new resources, feel free to send them to me and we can archive them here so that people can access them for as long as they can. So you see we have this policy map, and this is not all of the policies. Let's see if we've got John's policy on here. Don't quite think so, but we have a lot of policies on here. We're tracking this offline as well. So if you're looking for additional policies in a certain area, you can always contact us. Oh, we got to fix that link. So we have a good example of what we think are strong policies. We also have a lot of design tools. We have different technologies that you can review. We get a lot of questions about cost. So this NREL cost control strategies is a great resource if you have a client or someone that's asking about the cost of zero energy. So I encourage you guys to kind of go through these resources. Farah, here's the schools hub, so you can see got a lot of different resources there, even some Prop 39, which you might be interested in. So I also want to show you our new Getting to Zero building database. We're really excited about this because it allows us to update our building tracker more frequently. So you can see here that you can actually sort, if you just want to see all of the verified buildings, it'll just show you a map of the verified buildings and show you a list down below, which is pretty cool.
So just a little bit of orientation there. So the latest count, as Webley said, is over 600. Did you talk about the merging the verified? Okay. So there's so one of the things that's happening is when a verified building, is that 107 is the count for verified?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're seeing is over 100 verified buildings, and what that means is that those projects have given us data. So our definition, current working definition of a zero energy building is an energy efficient building that consumes only as much energy as it produces on site over the course of a year. You guys are working in this space, so you know that's kind of a simplistic definition. Things get more complicated when you have multiple buildings, or what if I can't have the renewables on site, but they're nearby, or what if I have a REC? There's a lot of different kinds of nuances to that. But what we're seeing is that, just for the purposes of this tracking, we're basically saying this is the definition. And so people have given us both generation data and energy use data, and that's how we're verifying those projects. The emerging segment, which you see is much larger and growing, is projects that have a stated zero energy goal. So this isn't always easy to achieve, and some projects don't achieve it. They just end up being amazing, energy performers, and that's okay. I mean, they're still really, incredible buildings, and so that's how we classify those. So the emerging segment is growing, more rapidly than verified because it takes a couple of years to get to the verified status. So our commitment is to continue to track these projects in ways that allows us, again, to just keep giving feedback to the market of, what's happening and a little bit of visibility into some of these successful projects.
And one other thing I wanted to mention was that we have over 600 projects in this list, but some of them are counted as campuses. So there might be 5 projects to 5 buildings to 1 project. And so we're in the process of switching that up. And so we will have all of the buildings in here. So we anticipate that this number will grow because we're no longer going to be counting just a portfolio or a campus. So you can see here that this tool has a lot of functionality on this analysis tab up here. You can take screenshots of these if you want to break it down by just looking at the projects in Arizona that are publicly owned office buildings. You can do that, and you can take screenshots of this and use this for your presentations. We do just ask that you cite that it came from New Buildings Institute. So we're really excited about that tool, and it's provided a lot of discussion around why isn't my building on here? And the reason your building might not be on here is because we don't know about it. And the way we know about it is when you tell us. So we have a form online that you can submit on that same page. You can submit and let us know about it. You can email us. So yeah, the more buildings we have, the better. So let us know. There's also the communications toolkit, which is a great list of resources, and it's based on your your market. So we have frequently asked questions. That's kind of a 101 to zero energy. We have vocabulary. We have design fundamentals. So what are the basic things that you need to know to get started? And then we also have fact sheets that are geared towards developers and owners and operators. So when you have these conversations with them, they can look at these fact sheets and be like, oh, okay, these are the benefits. I understand there's more than just the environmental benefit. There's a financial benefit as well.
One just thing I want to add to this. So a couple of things. One, we're going to be creating a media room. As I mentioned before, we're really trying to increase the amount of coverage that we're getting for these specific projects and some of the successful policies that we're seeing play out across the country. So, these will be available on the website, but we'll also start putting these into the media room. And these are open source documents. So, you can print them out as they are, or you can grab content from them and use them as you need to. We're not going to presuppose how they might be used. We do have photography that'll be in that media room where you guys can go and grab different images, just to add effect to a slide or something like that. So what we really want to do is make sure you have these pre-printed pieces, but also the raw materials that are going to help you communicate about zero energy. And so when we talk later, I think just to put a bug in your ear of, what are some of the things that you wish you had that would help you, that we can put resources towards developing and then providing.
Yeah. One other thing I forgot to mention is that the hub includes a lot of case studies. So it's just a good thing to know about. Here you see that we have case studies for commercial schools, multifamily, and single family. So we're working on building this out as well. So if you have case studies, send them our way and we can include them in here.
Yeah, case studies was pretty much, and we've done surveys of people that we've trained to say, what do you need? And we're asking you that as well. But by and large, cost information and case studies are the top 2 items. So I think we'll hear from you shortly whether you agree.
All right.
Hey, we have a question from Alice.
Mhm.
And my question pane's being a little fussy here. Does the database have the ability to break out ZNE buildings by new construction versus existing retrofits to ZNE and by emerging versus verified?
Emerging versus verified, yes. So you can see here that you can toggle between these two. So if you just want to see the emerging in a specific state, you can do that. And on this map and list tab down at the bottom, there's a list down here that you can see all of them. We do not have new construction versus existing buildings at this time or renovations. If that's something that you're looking for, we can help you with that. We do have some data on these projects, and not in all cases, we don't have all of the information you might be seeking, but we can probably help you. So feel free to reach out to us.
I think one of the other aspects of this is that we, as part of our efforts and part of the spotlighting that we're doing, we're trying to really showcase leadership. And I think, one of the things we've talked about is, and this is just really a challenge of getting the data and making sure that it's correct so we don't, give out wrong information. But, the benefit to design teams of being associated with these buildings, I think, is really high. And so we want to look into ways that we can, and the media room might be a place to do this, where we can connect certain firms or consultants back to the database projects, right? So if you get your project in there and somehow we are identifying you as being associated with that project on the website, and then that helps you kind of just with a little bit of highlighting the efforts that you're putting forward. Because one of the things we really want to do is make sure we're rewarding early adopters in this market for stepping forward and making sure that we're showing, how these early adopters are making change. So when we kind of get to the discussion part, like ideas you have related to that, I think would be really helpful. Any other questions, Connie, at this point?
Not at this time.
Okay.
So one more thing I want to share is that we have been supporting people that contact us with questions or saying, do you have this resource? And recently we had one of these local groups come to us and say, hey, we're trying to show zero energy homes, the importance of zero energy homes and the cost savings associated with it. And so we were able to make a local chart that shows the cost additions to the initial investment for zero energy versus zero energy ready home. And we also created this national one to share with everybody as well. So this will be on the residential portion of the hub soon.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, I think what we were hoping to do is open this up a little bit more for discussion. And so, Connie, I guess I'll ask you, do we want to try to unmute everyone, or what do you think? Or you want to keep doing the hand raising? Is that working for you?
It is. That's
Okay.
That seems to be fine.
Okay, so a couple of prompts here, just to try to kind of get us thinking about, this idea of what support would be most impactful. And so around that is, what is an idea, an image, a tool, or information that would help you explain, I think, advance the idea of getting to zero in your work, or explain to other people this concept. So think about that for a second. And then, beyond just understanding, what might be helpful, either an idea, an image, a tool, or some sort of material that provides information to motivate a colleague or a client or someone in your, someone that you're working with to choose to get to zero. So the 22.6 energy use intensity was kind of one little idea, but we recognize that there are others. So kind of those two ideas, and then do you want to show this second one? Just a little more depth in that, because we kind of brainstorm, well, what might we want to be answering in that process? So And I would just say, you know, as you're thinking about this, just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. We can start having this conversation. But, you know, what topics are challenging you? So it's like, you know, like I said, a lot of times I think the number one question that people get asked is, well, what's it going to cost me? And we have seen projects that, you know, are in line with conventional building, but we've also seen projects that are more expensive. So how do you explain that? What tools do you need? Are there design tools or, you know, different kinds of calculating tools that would help you in this, you know, in this, explaining this to other people on the market. Just questions too about how you approach zero energy with clients and, you know, some of the pain points that you experience as you do that, that we might be able to smooth out a little bit. You know, as a business, some of you are with consulting firms or other kinds of businesses, or, you know, maybe you are a business that's decided to, and you own a building and you've decided to, you know, push that building to zero energy. You know, what's the business case that motivated you to do that? You know, the developer segment of this market is somebody we're really interested in influencing. They're hard to reach. And so suggestions around that are really welcome. I think going forward, these last two really deal with, you know, the future of this influencer group, you know, this zero energy leadership group, and how we might be able to connect you with each other. What are the best channels for us to communicate with you? And we can kind of save that piece for later. But I think just opening it up to your thoughts now on the tools and concepts that we can pursue to help support you in the work that you're doing. Any responses yet, Connie? Waiting for people to get organized.
Not yet.
Okay. So one thing, well, one option is to unmute folks and see.
Yeah.
You want to try it?
I have everybody, according to my dashboard here, everybody is unmuted. They just need to, in most cases, let's see, I'm trying, are self,
You did?
yes. So I believe I've unmuted people.
Okay. All right. So if folks have things to share, ideas, otherwise we'll call on you. And then I think it sounds like you have to unmute yourself for us to be able to hear you.
So while we're waiting, John, I have a question for you. You said that you guys have had a lot of fun this last week with your carbon-free building assessment tool. What was the fun?
What was the fun?
It was fun. I'd like to hear a little bit more.
Sure. Well, not to go too nerdy on folks, but I think the fun is really starting to dig into the details of the question and to, I think, be much more, you know, architect, engineer building about it. You know, when we measure energy, it comes out in, you know, specific units, but when we come up with building solutions, it's wall types and products and systems. And so as we've been looking at this, we've also been trying to add to the conversation some basic starters around things like envelope performance, which we prioritize. So it's, you know, it's a low energy building. It's maximizing and optimizing the design for on-site on-roof PV. And so those two together are pretty interesting workspaces and really do have a lot of impact on design. So that's been kind of the fun part. It's really getting architects and builders to really think about their work and they love to talk about it. So that's been interesting.
Has there been any sticking points, any place where it's either been difficult, either technically or market-wise?
The market is, you know, we're in a regulatory position. You don't get to pick your clients.
Mm-hmm.
they all are asking for a building permit. So the quality and nature of the conversation varies. There are some folks who are very much at the forefront and are eagerly working at solutions. And then there are others who, we're trying to drag along. In both cases, there's a market conversation, and one might be a market leader who's pretty savvy about the value of certified buildings and buildings with PV and low energy and how to commoditize those in the market. And then there are others where, we're desperately trying to prove the business case to, especially around capital spending strategies. The other part is trying to reach beyond the first cost moment. Too much is really limited to what I would characterize as poor accounting of preferred outcomes. So, if you're asking me to do something more, I'm going to tell you the costs of the added things. I'm not going to account for things that are avoided. I'm not going to commoditize any added value or things like that. And it's all about building a case to oppose any additional requests. So I think the top of your list in terms of cost and case studies, it's still the big item. I'm sure you guys saw the Rocky Mountain Institute single family study.
Yep.
And Massachusetts was one of those localities where our utility programs reduced the cost for a zero energy ready home to a negative price, that it was cheaper. So that's great. I'd love to see more of that.
Okay.
Hey, John, before you wrap up here, we had another question for you from another attendee here. And she was asking if you would be able to share some of the building assessments. Is there a template or anything along those lines?
There's a couple of documents I can share. I'm just trying to think. Some of it's still pretty draft and formal, but the zero carbon assessment, I'd be happy to, share, with conditions. I can maybe put that in an email and let you guys decide how to distribute it. It would be worthwhile because we're figuring this out, and I don't have a database of responses that would help us start to refine the framework and questions and accounting, but I bet you others have.
Yeah, and that's the exact point here of what we're trying to do, is make sure that you guys aren't having to work in isolation and reinvent the wheel. So yeah, it would be great to have that shared. And I think when we put the call out, John, that is what I guess I would say, is if there are those of you that are looking for things, let's use this network to try to see if we can get it for you. So at least you have models to draw from and build on, as opposed to starting, from scratch.
Great. Yeah, and we would certainly, and maybe you guys could be the, the gang leader. If folks want to, you could share our outline, and I can point you to some of our data collection points, but it'd be interesting to see what others are doing and move this along more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks for sharing, John.
Sure.
Alice, you're unmuted. Would you like to go?
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks so much, Webley and Connie and everyone, for this call. I think this is a really great timing, at least for us folks in California, especially. I think the questions you've posed on the screen are really great ones, and maybe we'll get to get some feedback in response to those ones. But I would just like to put out there that it might be great to see, along with maybe quarterly webinars where we all cross-share, but it might be also interesting to see if there could be quarterly or bi-monthly regular periodic calls by topic, maybe smaller sector groups, and you guys might know this, or some of you who know me might know this. You know, my interest is K-14, so schools and community colleges, and I'm looking to push zero carbon on a largest scale as I can. So, and maybe this is could be continued offline with Amy and a couple of other people as well. But so just throwing the suggestion out there that maybe folks would be interested around market sectors and or existing versus new construction. Because I find that, you know, it's like you've got so much information and there's so many great resources, right? On your site, RMI, you know, there's a couple of main, you know, big websites with all this information. And if you're from any one sector, whether, you know, schools or, you know, single family homes, residential, whatever, it's just kind of overwhelming, right? And I think that maybe looking down to the local level and then by sectors and then even existing or new helps to sort of narrow the focus and maybe could get maybe more traction.
Yeah, that's great. Does anyone have anything to add on to that? Just that idea of how we might be able to, you know, for lack of a better word, chunk this out, you know, to make it palatable, because there are a lot of people working in different kind of aspects of this market, and how do we make sure that what we're sharing resonates with the groups that we're sharing it with. Okay. Well, schools is definitely one. Residential is another sector where RMI has been working. We pull these resources together. Another, and you know, we want to, part of this, for those of you that don't know, we have a Getting to Zero forum that's coming up in October in Oakland. And we've worked really hard to add residential content to that. I think, you know, MBI traditionally comes from a commercial orientation, but we know that residential's like coming on strong in California and other parts of the country. And so really working more to have some of those resources and, you know, available to you. Another segment that we're looking at is embodied carbon. So we're seeing that as we push the, you know, as we push the stringency for energy efficiency in codes, embodied carbon becomes a much more bigger part of the puzzle. And so we're working, you know, to integrate some of that. We haven't really worked in embodied carbon in the past, and so we're working with the Carbon Leadership Group out of University of Washington to curate some resources that'll help different design teams understand, you know, what kind of choices they could be making to limit the carbon impact of that building, both for residential and commercial. So, you know, other suggestions or topics that you think are emerging or, you know, growing importance to you, we'd love to hear what those are so that we can make sure we're digging in on those a little bit more. Do we have any
other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay. So I think, oh yeah, that one. Well, here's a good one, yeah. So just looking to the future, I think one of the things that we're trying to get a sense of is, as this market progresses, what are some of the mileposts, you know, or markers that we're looking for to tell us that we're on the right path? And so I think one of the questions we have is, you know, as a market leader, someone really working in this market, when you look forward, what are some of the things that, you know, you would expect to see so that we can check ourselves about our thinking? So you've got, you know, different policies that are calling for all residential new construction to be zero energy or zero carbon by date certain. And those are definitely, you know, ones that we would see. But I guess the question about numbers of buildings or, you know, kind of market penetration of policies across the country that you would expect to see. I wonder if you guys have any thoughts or ideas about those markers. And I think we'll just let folks talk, you know, when they're ready.
Hi, this is Cole Jennings with Mason and Hanger. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're a primarily a federal consultant and architecture engineering firm. And I was thinking about asking this question earlier. Honestly, I'm not sure if I have a specific question or more just sort of a comment. And this got my thought process churning, which is we are, we're constantly pushing for energy efficiency. We have yet to do a net zero project, and part of that struggle is the current political climate is much more focused on bare metrics like life cycle cost. But what we're seeing a little bit of traction with, at least in getting people to listen, is a trend towards increased resilience and basically boosting the mission and increasing operational capacity, especially in the event of something like a natural disaster. So I really see this as a potential trend that intersects very strongly with the net zero movement, where if you're working on the type of project or facility where running in a emergency situation or continuing operations during that kind of event is important, then that can be a really secondary, if not primary, selling point for pushing for a new zero building. So that's more a comment than a question, but it's also something I'm always looking to hear others' experiences and or success stories in pursuing that particular avenue of convincing a client or owner of the benefits of not just net zero, but energy efficiency in general.
Yeah, that's a great component of zero energy that isn't always talked about. It really depends on who the client is. I know in California, there's been a lot of discussion around fire resiliency, and then with some of the larger superstorms that we've had, it's come up more frequently. Atelier 10 out of New York had a great study. I hope you guys have all seen it. It's called Baby, It's Cold Inside, and it's a really cool study where they looked at how buildings performed when temperatures change. So it's really cold and the power goes out for 4 days. What happens inside the building in a code compliant building compared to an ultra low building? And it's a really great visual to kind of show your client if they're really concerned about resiliency and how they can perform when maybe the grid is not as stable.
We can send that link out too.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's on in the resources. All right. Thank you so much, Cole, for sharing
Absolutely.
that. Does anyone, we're kind of running short on time, but I want to make sure that if other people have stuff they want to share, that they have the opportunity to. Okay.
So I want to.
You just unmuted me. This is Farah with San Bernardino Community College District. I just want to just add that as an owner, the leadership at our campuses are very much interested and engaged in achieving and working towards achieving zero net energy, zero carbon. We're working on our plans about creating a roadmap as how to achieve that at our campuses. From our pilot program, the issue that is forefront is engaging the user group, because we've implemented the system and we've given very little control to the occupants to make a little adjustment to the air and to the light and so on and so forth. We plan on taking even that little control away when we move into the campuses. It'd be a little bit easier to do in bigger classrooms, but one of our challenges to engage the occupants, educate the occupants, and get them to allow the systems and controls to work as it should, and not constantly call and complain it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too hot, lights are too dim, so on and so forth. Just get on with the program. The leadership wants it, so we're working on ways to manage the various expectations so that the system can work as it should. Another challenge I'm having is that we have various different control systems. I'm hoping to bring all of them on one dashboard, going through different scenarios to see how they can all talk to each other. We had really good experience with Enocean wireless controls. So the challenge is occupants education and buying into it, and then finding the right control system that you can bring it all on a dashboard and see it and see the impact where you reduce energy in one building and another building is using more energy. So that's where we are at right now.
Yeah, those are all really important technological changes that are happening. And as new technologies come on board, we're seeing more collaboration between the different pieces of equipment. They're more open source and talking to each other. And I think that's going to be a trend that we're seeing, but it can be an issue for some of the older or first generation zero energy buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can make sure that we have.
Stacy and Webley, we just lost your audio. Hi, everybody. I'm going to step in and wrap this up for Stacy and Webley. Their contact information is on the screen in front of you if you want to continue to communicate on this topic. And we thank you very much for joining us today. Bye-bye.